You're here at Decoding SEO Success Secrets, where we break down the SEO strategy of popular software companies so that you can deploy them yourself. And the idea has been that it can be all fun reading an abstract SEO guide that talks about keyword research in general, but it's even more fun seeing SEO and content in the wild and how people actually implemented those tactics. And I'm especially excited because today, BambooHR was picked by all of you as a company that you want us to decode. I followed them for a while, and they're getting more and more space on page one recently, and so I think it's a good pick. Quickly want to introduce myself as well and my guest today. My name is Viola. I run an SEO agency called Flow SEO, where we help software startups to rank on Google. And super excited today to be joined by Mary Ellen. We've known each other for about 2 years now and have worked on a bunch of projects together since then. It's always a pleasure to work with her. And I see Mary Ellen as, my Avenger, my second superhero, the complementary relationship that I need to have right when I want to win at SEO. She is an expert at thought leadership content, messaging, content marketing, and her team have helped us tremendously translating SEO strategies into the reality of beautiful content, beautiful websites. And so excited to have her here. Welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me. I should know that your name is usually preceded when I'm describing you to like our clients, and I'm like, okay, we have to bring in Flow, and I say my beloved Flow SEO will be available for this. So, because what like I said, as someone who focuses on the thought leadership of content marketing, it's really important to me to have a partner for SEO that understands B2B content and the intersection of SEO and thought leadership, because those two things, they go together like peanut butter and jelly, like they need each other. They both will work on their own, but not nearly as well as if we join the strategies. So
totally agree.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. And I work a lot in HR tech. That's actually where we intersect. We frequently work on projects just like Bamboo. And while that's not a RepCap client, I have worked with their competitors. And so I've paid very close attention over the years to what they've done. And they've done some interesting things.
Agreed. And so everyone that is in the room today, there's still some people joining. You're going to hear the ding from time to time, just this very second. I would love to hear, what industry are you in? Are you in HR tech? Where are you calling in from? I'm calling in from Berlin. What's your experience with SEO, and what's your experience with thought leadership content? I would love to get to know everyone a little bit. So feel free to pop that in the chat. So that we can all meet each other. In general, keep having a way with questions throughout the webinar. And so Mary Ellen and I are gonna ping pong through the slides. I have some SEO observations that I'm gonna share, and she's gonna share her perspective on content and messaging. And so we really want your question. That's usually what makes things fun and interesting. There are no stupid questions, so feel free throughout the webinar, popping questions into the chat. All right, to set the stage. So BambooHR is an HR software. It is kind of like an old HR software in the sense that they were founded in 2008. So they've been around the block for a while. But what is interesting here is their SEO performance. On the left, you see two screenshots from a Ahrefs. The top one is showing the overall visibility of the site as indicated by the number of keywords that they're ranking for. And then on the bottom, it's kind of hard to see the dark orange here. So I put another screenshot of just the dark orange part of the chart, that is the number of page one rankings. And interestingly enough, even though they've been around for so long, their page one rankings really went through the roof this year. And so I think that's making it an interesting case study, that it's been a household name, but they've been really pushing the SEO efforts over the last 2 years. And you can really see that coming to fruition in 2022. And so let's do it. I'll quickly talk about when is the right time for SEO. I'll talk about why glossaries are everywhere and anyway these days. And then we'll talk a little bit about rankings and conversion, and why simply being in the top positions is not considered an SEO success, and why you kind of want to think about conversion messaging, attracting the right audience down the way. And all along, there's always the option to put in questions. All right, I'm going to start with this one, which is, when is the right time for SEO? And Mary Ellen, I'm very curious on your opinion on this one as well. But I know there's a school of thought of people who always who tell startups, like, you got to start SEO kind of like on day one. You know, SEO takes time. This is why you got to start it early, etc. And I've always been of the opinion that if you're an early stage startup and you were founded within, let's say, the last 24 months, maybe going after SEO is not your first choice as the marketing channel. And the reason being the following. One reason is practical. If you want to go after SEO seriously, you kind of need two relationships and two resources like sorted and available to you. And the first resource is your content marketing team, whether that's your own team or you're working with an agency partner. You do need to have a consistent publishing flow, cadence, the ability to put out content. Otherwise, your SEO agency is going to give you a lot of recommendations that you can't implement. And content is really the foundation of SEO. And so if you don't have that resource in place, it's really, really hard to do SEO well. And the second resource is kind of like web development and the ability to make changes to the website. If the people who are developing your website are the people who are also developing your product, chances are that if you're an early stage startup, that all the resources always go into product development, and that you never get, you know, the resources to make any big changes to the website. And so these are just two practical reasons. I think if you don't have the ability to produce content or change the website, it's going to be very, very hard for SEO. And then the other reason is SEO is kind of like a huge, huge, huge container ship that changes directions kind of slowly. Mm-hmm. And so my assumption has been is you want to start SEO when you know what's working. If from your sales enablement content, from your performance marketing, from your other marketing initiatives, you know what people like and you want to scale that and you want to get more eyeballs and you want to get more of those people, this is when you start SEO. And then ideally at this point, you already have some links coming in as well. So the website is in pretty good shape. And all that kind of comes down to internal alignment and being on the same page that now is the time for SEO and you want to put serious like time and energy into it. And so that's been my thought, why I've shied away from introducing SEO very, very early. And also why I think BambooHR maybe took its time to put SEO in full swing. And so curious, Mary Ellen, what's with your experience? When did you see, people start prioritizing SEO in their startup journey?
I 100% agree with this, I guess, which probably won't surprise you, but even to elaborate on this a little bit further, you mentioned like that it takes a while to kind of steer that SEO ship. If you're not in a place where your other channels are already generating enough leads and, awareness to keep the business going to meet your basic metrics like right now, SEO is not going to solve that problem for you, right? SEO is a way of building so that pipeline is healthy and sustainable 6 months from now. And I hate to say that. It's like, it is not an instant solution. There are ways, if you want to go fast, we need to do some different things, right? And most startups need to go fast, right? They need to get those early revenue things. And SEO is slow. So you need to have some patience. If I were to add they call it internal alignment, but it's like my sister kind of tagged to that is like, you need to have a mature enough marketing function and enough trust inside your organization and your leadership, or leadership trust marketing, to like give it space to do the job, because that is part of it. And then the second piece of it is indeed having something to say. And I'm not saying you have to have it all buttoned up exactly, but you have to be ready, because in order to win the SEO game, you're going to have to say a lot about a topic. And I think that surprises some folks sometimes when they're new to this and they realize like, wait, we just wrote a story about employee development plans. And I'm like, no, that was employee development planning. And this is employee development plan examples. And that's a different post. And I'm going to need 1,500 words on that one too. Right. And so we often talk about going deep in an area. It's like you pick your topical area, you've got that big idea that you want to be around. You're clear on your value prop, your what for whom for your business. but I think people think that they know, and then you tell them just how deep it's going to have to go. And in a small organization, you will find very quickly that, like, if you mentioned the resources, it's like, are you really ready to write, to put the kind of investment where you can't write once a month and win this game?
Yeah.
You can't do it. So
yeah.
Anyway, I agree with this, and I agree with, this is the checklist. I like to see people, if they figured out who they are, whether it's a private company or it's a funded startup, you need to be past your seed round before we're talking about this. Almost inevitably, there's something else you should be working on before you call us. But for an established company, like if you're a Series C and past, like, oh yeah, you definitely need to be in this, right? If you've got a stable private company that's profitable, it's time. Like, it's time.
I 100% agree. Very, very much so. And just Eduardo wrote a quick comment: keyword stuffing, text duplicates, etc. So just to say that up front, I'm also not a very keyword focused SEO, in the sense that I spend a lot of time thinking about keyword mapping and site architecture and what articles do I want? Are they clearly distinct? Are they unique to each other? Once I have that structure of the website in place, I actually like for the writers to very much focus on writing a good article and then sprinkle in keywords in the end. And so you probably, you'll find me a lot more thinking about keywords up front than later in the text optimization, even though we obviously do that as well. Exactly.
I think often what matters in many ways, more even so people think about SEO as keywords, I think about keywords as intent. Like I tell my folks, no matter what SEMrush or whatever tools we're using, it isn't really about that. It's like when you look at something, before we publish it, you should say, what is the question that this answers for someone? If someone is looking for information and they find this, and like, there are different kinds of, it's not about what keywords I use. Google's gotten really smart on this front, right? Am I shopping for new HR software? Am I looking for advice on this particular payroll issue? Those are different things. So write your content, whether it uses a certain keyword or not, is less important than did you answer my question? Like whose question are you answering? So that's how I think about it. No keyword stuffing. Keyword stuffing's bad.
100%. Probably, if anything, I would say keyword clusters and topics.
Topic clusters.
Which leads me to the next point. Actually, I want to talk about BambooHR for a second, which is they are really a content powerhouse in a variety of ways. And so this is a distribution of what are the type of pages that they have on their website. And so you can see that they're really producing a lot. They have a huge blog, but they also have a huge glossary. They publish a lot of resources. That's your sales enablement stuff, like your white paper, ebooks. They do have a lot of webinars. And so not all of the content that they're producing is for SEO. Like the landing page to download a white paper is typically not an SEO target. It's usually short, brief, and conversion optimized. But they do have a lot of content that does lend themselves to SEO, which is long form and typically evergreen. This is usually how I make out, what has the potential to be an SEO piece. And so content types that lend themselves to SEO are blog content, glossary content, guides, your product pages. And just to translate this chart also into some numbers. So BambooHR has about 1,300 pages. And so we can see, right, they have a blog with around 340 posts, but they also have a glossary with 330 pages, 220 resources. So there are things there, right? There's stuff to work with. And so that's what I mean. SEO has been, it seems to me, a very, very strong part of their marketing mix, at least in the last 2 years. And SEO has been driving a lot of their content production, but it is not the only content they produce. Between the virtual summit, the webinars, the press releases, they're doing a lot of other stuff as well. Mary Ellen, do you have any thoughts on that, or?
No, I think that, so just looking at this mix, this is clearly a very intentional mix, I would say. In the sense that, like, you can see that this didn't happen by accident. You mentioned earlier, you're talking about content architecture and messaging architecture and site architecture. This to me is the evidence of, when I look at this from the outside, and by the way, this isn't our client, right? Like, we can just see this from the outside in this mix. This to me tells me there is there is a really good content strategist here. There is someone that is planning messaging architecture and content architecture that is saying this is the proportions that we need to create to meet our goals. So this is very elegant to me, actually, because this is pretty close to what I would do on purpose. You know, this tells me there's an architect. And I think that's the right balance. I think it's a good balance.
I agree with that. And just a couple of questions. Carlos asked, which country is this based on? So basically, to make all the charts that I'm showing in the presentation, I did a content audit, again, from the outside. So we're using Screaming Frog, SEO Crawler, and Ahrefs to pull their ranking data, their number of pages. And then in the spreadsheet, started to create, you know, these graphics from that. And I agree with that. As you can see, there is a very heavy weight on long form content rich pages that we can work with from an SEO perspective. And so let's quickly show how some of their stuff is ranking and what might have been written with SEO in mind and what might have been written with SEO and other stuff in mind. So this is their blog. And on the chart on the right side, we can see ranking brackets. So we can see all the rankings from 0 to 9. So page 1, page 2, page 3, etc. And so we can see that actually out of all of the blog posts that they've created, 33% of their blog posts have a keyword on page 1 and 17% of their blog posts are on page 2. So they are the ones with SEO potential that could be pushed even further up. Only 18% of their blog posts are not ranking. And so this is interesting because not every blog post needs to be an SEO target, but clearly a bunch of them have been because about half of them are on page 1 or 2. And even interestingly, maybe before I go into product pages, Mary Ellen, if you want to speak to the blog, I'll let you do that.
Yeah, one thing, I am surprised at just how many of them rank. I mean, this is because there are things like an example of a type of content that doesn't need to rank would be profiles. Like, so if you do a customer profile, the primary intent of that is not to rank. And in fact, it's probably not going to be long enough to rank. You know, you may do other things. I call them like sort of influencer type. If I put things in buckets, it's like, this is to be influencers to be shareable versus being findable. So I'm honestly a little shocked at how much of it, like I would not have considered, I would have considered a win much higher than this number not ranking. So there are a lot that are ranking. They clearly have made SEO a big focus for them.
I agree. And I think one thing is, for example, their press releases are in a different spot. That probably helps them. But I think then the other stuff that you mentioned, influencers and also product updates, I think they have in a different spot. So they moved some of the stuff that is not so SEO-y to other parts of the websites, which I think is smart. Things actually get a little bit crazier even when we think about their product pages. And so their product pages are, you know, their feature pages, they're linked from their header navigation. It's where they explain people, you know, what they are. They're typically very conversion focused. And of course, everyone wants their product pages to rank. Like everyone wants to rank for employee onboarding software, HR software, HR tracking tool. Of course, everyone wants that. But these are typically the keywords that are most competitive. There's G2, there's Capterra, there's, you know, Trust Radius, there's review sites, affiliate sites on page 1. They're your competitors on page 1. Often the SEO needs conflict with some conversion and messaging needs. Like we know that, you know, you want to have a sexy benefit in your top headline, but your SEO wants you to put the keyword in there. More often than not, the SEO loses the battle, and probably rightfully so. But it is kind of surprising that almost all of their product pages are on page 1. And you can see that here is a screenshot. You can see that they have very clean URL structure. Your URL structure basically tells them what they're trying to rank for. And they have done a very good job at actually ranking for you know, their target keyword, more or less, which I'm very impressed by. And part of the reason that makes me think they managed to do that is they seem to have put a huge emphasis on SEO, and more so than I've seen other clients put emphasis on SEO with their product pages. They've done a very good clear keyword mapping, like I showed. This is good, but they also made their pages insanely long. And so you can see most of the pages are like 1,500 words or longer, which is unusual for a landing page. Oop. And then they actually build a lot of links to them as well. So this is like under 20 links, 20 to 40 links, etc. They build a lot of like referring domains to the pages. And then this is a screenshot from the headline one. I don't know how you feel about this, Mary Ellen. It's literally just performance management software. It doesn't have any anything juicy around it. And so
I don't need anything juicy. Okay, you know, one of my rules, and you've heard me say this, is that clear beats clever every time.
Yeah.
And I also want to say something else about BambooHR and their market and why I think it was like such a totally correct thing to do to invest in SEO as opposed to some other types of marketing. This is an SMB product. Small business owners absolutely Google to find the tools that they then buy. Right. And it's a huge market. It's a volume play. And in doing this, they don't sit down and search like for esoteric things. You know, they don't and it's about intent. Someone is truly sitting down and searching for this term. And if they are a small business owner, they are looking to purchase this thing, not to understand this thing in some vague way. And so I think it's actually about intent. I think they won because they were very focused on what their specific buyer, like that human typing, what are they looking for? And they answered the question.
I love that. And I think I love that you highlighted the SMB versus enterprise market, because I think in many ways the SMB is much more, it's much more a volume game. You need more eyeballs to your website. You need more signups, self-served. It's different in an enterprise market where you lead, not necessarily a huge lead number, but you need a very, very targeted, specific type of lead and contact. And there's very little of them. And there's a big sales process involved with that and a different price point.
You mean where we might only get 5 hits on a page and we're like crushing it? That's a different presentation, Viola. The one where we get excited about getting 5 people on a page because it's worth $5 million.
I think I agree. And this I'll come back to a second. Like a few months ago, we've looked at Personio, which is a European HR software that's been kind of like going after the SMB market as well. And I think, yeah, you hit the nail on the head here. The entire thing is that they need the volume. They need the volume and they're really, really up front and giving people what they want. And they've done something that I think a lot of other people would not consider. Writing a landing page that is so long and so keyword focused. And what that does is it does kind of compete in word count and SEO signals with a lot of the review sites. And so I think it's a pretty bold move, but the rankings reward them. That being said, if you're doing enterprise, just to think about this, you maybe want to do then, you know, enterprise HR software or different long tail variations. It might not be as important for you, you know, to have that head keyword term, but it might be more important for you to have these modifiers that indicate enterprise level search intent. And then the search volume might go down to 10 searches a month, 20 searches a month, but you don't care as much because you don't need 2,000 SMBs to come to your page. You know, you need 5 enterprise companies to come to your page. Nice. All right. And yes, quickly, Wasim asked about link building. I mean, they clearly have a link building strategy in place here. All of the pages have like links to them. So 2 pages have under 20 links, 3 pages have 20 to 40 links, you know, and so we can see on average between 20 to 100 links to those pages, referring domains, even not links. Links would be even higher to those pages. All right, let's talk about another SEO masterpiece that they did, which is their glossary. And glossary, I'm like so impressed that this seems to be like the hottest thing that we're doing in SEO in the last 18 months or so. Revenue.io has one, ActiveCampaign has one, Personio has one, they have one. And so it's kind of like the hottest thing to do. And again, they're being incredibly rewarded. This chart, again, 75% of their pages are on page 1, 18% are on page 2. So out of their 350 or some pages that they created, pretty much all of them are on page 1 for a keyword variation. And you can again see that they have a very clear URL structure that shows you the keywords that they're aiming to rank for. And the glossary literally looks like this. It has a master hub on which all of these pages are there, which makes for a very clean structure, very clean linking. And one of the reasons why I think people like putting glossaries up is it really allows you to bulk out SEO content without flooding your blog. If you have a glossary section, you can put up 50 pages on a Tuesday, and your blog is not going to look weird. And so I feel like that's kind of explained the popularity of glossaries lately. It's just a good place to put a whole amount of SEO content. And then people don't really go here, right? That's not really the use case. They don't really want people who are already on the page to go to the header navigation, go to the glossary. I mean, if they do that, that's fine. But the funnel is really the other way around. People type a keyword into Google, and then they come to the glossary entry. And then from there, they go deeper into the website. And so the other point is they call it glossary, but it's really not a glossary. Again, the word count on this pages is huge, which about half of them having 3,000 to 3,500 words. And I looked into Wayback Machine. So the first time this page, HR Glossary, came up was late 2019. And then there have been a lot of changes and entries to it in 2020 and 21. And so the assumption is that a lot of the spike in traffic and rankings that they're seeing right now was laid the foundation in 2021 when they put up 2020 and 21 when they put up so many glossary pages. And that's what Mary Ellen been saying. Yeah, like, there needs to be trust in an organization to put a glossary up in 2020 and then start ranking in 2022. Any thoughts, Mary Ellen, on glossary in general and there specifically?
Actually, you know, I have a question for you, actually, because it kind of comes back to when you make those decisions. I think that a lot of people assume that when they publish SEO posts that they go on their blog, but they don't have to. How do you decide when something is just a blog? I want to say just, that's the wrong word. How do you determine when the right way to publish something is to make it a post, like a blog post inside their blog, versus a page that kind of we talk about pillar pages and pillar post. You know, I call a pillar post like an extra long blog post, like, you know, but a pillar, and I expect maybe to even have to update it, you know, but like a pillar page tends to be something like I tend to have a pillar page aligned to a solution that's an important focus. You know, a glossary almost is a type of pillar or hub page to me. How do you separate that out? Like, how do you decide which one to do?
Great question. Actually, we have a few of the SEOs that I'm working with and from the team in the chat. So Helene, Gabby, feel also free to chime in here in the chat. But first I'll say, I'm of the opinion that in the eyes of Google, doesn't necessarily matter so much if it's a web page or a blog post. The blog post has a date. More often so, and maybe has a perceived like difference. But I think in the eyes of Google, it doesn't necessarily matter if you're producing a blog post or a page. But I think people default to blog posts because they're the easiest to upload. You know, everyone knows kind of like the WordPress editor, you put it in there. It's fast, it's efficient, it doesn't need that many approvals. Most people have a process in place for how to put a blog post up. And so I like to start with blog posts because they're usually an easier win in terms of like getting the content machine going. Writing and updating blog posts is usually quite straightforward to people. However, I do think blog posts often have some limitations in terms of design and conversion options. And like, how can you embed call to actions? What's the flow of the page? It can be quite generic and not so inspiring. And so when I like to think about pillar pages or hub pages for kind of the core topics of a business, like the 3 or 4 or 5 things that you want to stand for. You're an employee engagement software. You should probably have a pillar page for employee engagement. And so that is that. But then more so, I like to start using pages once we have good templates for that. And whether that's, okay, we have a good product page template that we can work with and we can roll out a bunch. We have a good long form content pillar page template that we can work with. We have a great glossary page template. And so if we have the option and ability to create page templates, then I start using pages more because I think it gives a lot more flexibility in terms of design and conversion. And I think the more I think about scaling up content, I like putting stuff into hubs and pillars. And that's mainly for that reason, to not totally flood the blog with SEO content. I think that is like one of the main main considerations that makes the more content our clients want to publish, the more inspired I am to do glossary type or hub type solutions, just to maintain the website structure and keep the blog kind of clean, and keep the user flow on the website a little bit more straightforward. How do you think about it? And what would you like to add or challenge in that?
I think about it as how likely it is to need to get updated, right? I think of pages as being more fixed, like they might get updated maybe once every 6 months. Whereas I think blog posts, I love updating old copy, like old content. I mean, I'm not above like, like once a month going in and like continuing to tweak a post to like keep pushing that ranking. So maybe I'm not the right one to ask. It is easier on a post. Like, yeah. I think it's whatever gets it done. The things that I do think of it as like if they're truly like pillar topics and they're unlikely to need to get changed a lot. And a glossary shouldn't need to get changed a lot. It's the definition of something. But a post, there's good reasons to come back in and, add a new example.
That being said, I really hope this cookie notice can disappear a little bit. Not sure why. I accepted this like a million times. So someone asked, what is their glossary really? Their glossaries are pages. Maybe you can pull it up yourself without a cookie notice. So you can see they have HR glossary / onboarding, and then they have the page here. I think BambooHR didn't put a huge amount of effort into designing this to look good, but this is a page. But I would say you do want to keep it like somewhat up to date as well. Yeah, I've been like, someone said click on yes. Okay. There you go. Thank you so much, Carlos. I managed to close it. So yeah, basically, so this is their glossary. So these are just pages under the slug HR glossary. And then from there, they can link to other pages or blog posts, etc. There's no mistake in that. And you can see that they link from the onboarding blog post to onboarding software as a CTA, and then kind of like related onboarding tips and definite guide to onboarding. These are the other things that they link to. And just to show how does it look on a few competitors, it's a very similar idea. Eddy.com has the HR encyclopedia, and you can see onboarding. I like theirs a little bit better for their table of content. I think it's very neat. I like that they have some quotes in here, some images with the link to the podcast, etc. But very similar idea. It's a page. And just to drive the point home, this is the HR lexicon by Personio, onboarding. Personally, it's probably my favorite in terms of like links to a nice CTA, has a table of content, looks good, has a sticky CTA here, other CTA here. I think like I'm visually probably most pleased by the Personio one. And so that's just quickly to follow up on the question, like, what does this look like? And also there was a question, do I think this could also work for service businesses, such a marketing agency? I think it can absolutely work. Just keep in mind that a lot of people are very good at SEO in the marketing space, including HubSpot, Neil Patel, and the like. And so if comes kind of back to when is the right time for SEO, if you're a really, really small agency and you're trying to rank for email marketing, you're going to be straight up against HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, et cetera. It's going to be hard. And so you probably want a very niche, long tail glossary. But yeah, it could absolutely work for a service business. All right, glossaries everywhere. I just said that. So I just showed, right? BambooHR has one, Personio has one. BambooHR is by far the strongest one in terms of like how many keywords they rank for in the US. But then you can see Personio has been working on it a lot recently. Eddy also been working on it a lot. And so you can see these are their page 1 rankings. BambooHR is definitely winning, but Eddy is like catching up. And I specifically added this little comparison between Personio, Eddy, and BambooHR because someone from the Eddy team messaged me on LinkedIn. And I was like, I want to look into the direct comparison. But I think what's even more interesting is, hopefully going to the next slide. Here is this too. How many people do these companies have? And I did this by looking at the employee on LinkedIn, account on LinkedIn. Eddy is a very small company. And so kudos to you guys for making it happen and building out such a strong SEO strategy around your glossary. Really, really well done. And then just shout out to our own blog. If you want to read more about Personio or how to make a glossary for SEO, these are two links that I recommend you checking out.
You mentioned Personio. I actually had someone approach me, like a prospect, like say someone I've worked with before at another company, and they reached out to me this week to have me help with another project that they're working on. And this was the example they gave me of like, we need you to do this for us.
Yeah.
Please do this.
Yeah,
and pointed to this glossary. It was like they were deeply jealous of the Personio glossary, and they're like, "Please make this."
And and like I said, if you're not so in the HR space, look at Revenue.io, Active Campaign. It's really, really getting popular. That's not to say that you necessarily need to jump at it, but it's definitely, again, it's an interesting way to house SEO content. And so I think I'm going to keep this very, very brief, just because of time, so we can talk a bit more. But just for glossaries in general, it's not very different from any other SEO strategy that you want to deploy. So I would start at a huge keyword research, and keyword research is really your market research. And I would try to understand all the topics that people could potentially look for, then prioritize them based on ranking difficulty. And again, the smaller you are, the more long tail you want to go. So the fact that these guys can rank for onboarding doesn't necessarily mean that you can, but you can probably rank for something onboarding for in the construction industry or something like this that is more long tail and specific if you're a smaller player. Then prioritize and set that into a content plan. And then it really comes down to creating that page template and that process for putting content up. And so just a couple of comments here. Somehow all of the glossaries out there seem to have come to the conclusion that just simply putting like the alphabetical order is the way to go, which from an SEO perspective, totally fine, makes great internal linking. But I do think from a user experience, you're doing well, having some sort of like searching or clustering by topic. And so that's something that Eddie.com has done well. And I think someone like BambooHR could do better. And then the other thing is, like I said, this idea, table of content, matching CTAs, related posts. Once you start getting all these eyeballs, start thinking about what are you doing with them and how can you convert people. And that's the point I do want to talk a little bit more. BambooHR has 245 pages on page 1, with an Ahrefs estimates that there is around 414,000 users per month coming from search to those pages. And then, for example, onboarding, that's the text, that's the CTA. I'm going to give curious about your gut feeling or intuition, whether you think that is like the strongest CTA and funnel that the world has ever seen. I do have a feeling that they could be doing more out of these eyeballs and this content because their SEO strategy is brilliant and has worked out so well. And I feel like now the pages could use some makeup and refine messaging.
Yeah, you know, I don't like to see a learn more. You know, like I never want to see a learn more. It's like, I don't want to, right? Like that's not a pain point. Like that's not really like, I mean, I don't know. Here's my problem with that CTA. I don't know when I click on that CTA if I'm going to a guide to help me learn more, if I'm going to a webinar, or if I'm going to a product page, or if it's going to trigger a book a demo. That's my problem with that, right? That doesn't actually tell me what's going to happen next, which is, I'm very into clarity, you know, in CTAs and in headlines. It's like, this content's awesome. But yeah, it's like, I don't know where that's going to take me. I mean, what does it say? Set your people up for success from the start. Like,
yeah, spoiler, it's going to take you to the product page, but it is
it's an informative product page at least, but like, but you see, y'all, because y'all see what I mean. It's like, that doesn't tell me, it doesn't really tell me. And so I'm unlikely, if your page visitor has to hesitate and wonder what's going to happen when they click the link, your CTA is bad.
I love that.
That's it. That's my rule there. So get rid of those learn mores.
I love it. And so I wanted to add a few thoughts to this. And then I want to talk kind of like about unique messaging and kind of like drill on your expertise a little bit, Mary Ellen. I think part of the reason why people buy BambooHR despite the CTA lies beyond their SEO efforts, right? They're an old company. They're a well-known company. They have a lot of really good reviews on the review sites. They're getting a lot of traffic from performance marketing. They have a lot of integration partners, right? So they're definitely a name in the space that people have come across. They did a huge virtual summit. They do a lot of webinars. They do a lot of resources. And so when someone comes and types a very generic term, they might have the benefit of people already having seen them around. That makes them click to their page and also convert for some of the CTAs. And so just wanted to give that kind of like, I think if these pages convert extremely well for them, there might be more at play that they've done as a brand over the last 2 years than just that SEO page.
I mean, yeah, clearly this has been an integrated plan, right? I'm sure. I mean, I guess I also want to say I can infer from the background of this that lots of money got spent on ads too, right? Do not think that like they entirely drove their growth off of organic SEO. Not that we would ever say that. If anybody tells you that you can drive the kind of growth that BambooHR has had solely on organic SEO, they are most definitely lying.
Yeah.
They spent a lot of money and they put a lot of love actually into their review site. So, you mentioned earlier, like what should early stage startups be doing? And like, I'm often surprised when I do my content audit, one of the first places I look for in the content are on the review sites, and people haven't even claimed that site. It's like, until this thing is beautiful, don't talk to me about SEO.
Yeah.
Like that's
I agree.
That'll get you further. So, but yeah, it's like they put a lot of love into this. 159 webinars, 220 resources, and you think about, and also that's not a huge team. I also want to tell y'all, if you go take a look, I mean, they've certainly used extended resources, but the core team, they are lean and mean and productive. You don't put out 220 resources and host 159 webinars by having everybody in the company review every slide deck. So,
yeah.
Good work, Bamboo. Like,
they're killing it. They're absolutely killing it. Yeah. It's like every time I kind of like click something on the other screen, then it doesn't want to go to the other slide anymore. All right. I want to talk about something that's been on my mind a lot lately, and I know it's always been on your mind, which is the fact that I just showed you 3 HR tools, kind of in the same space. All 3 of them are doing a glossary. All 3 of them are putting long form content on their glossaries. All 3 of them have a page about onboarding, rank for employee onboarding. And so they're obviously following SEO best practices. So they've done proper keyword research, they've prioritized the content. But I think what's interesting is my favorite quote of yours, which is, if you were to copy your content on your competitor's website, would anyone notice? And so that's something that I've been really wrestling with. And I think a lot of content marketers wrestle with as well, which is that SEO feels very rigid. It feels very limited. It feels very uncreative. It feels like it can't really have a point of view. And curious how you think about SEO and being able to be recognized, which I think is winning the ranking is one thing. And then people recognizing you and remembering you is a different thing. And so, yeah, I would love for you to pitch in here to kind of like see, how do we set ourselves apart when there's 3 HR companies, 3 products, 3 glossaries, 3 same pages?
So this is the question that sometimes makes grown-ass men cry. Like in the middle of the call, right? In my call, like in my pitch calls, right? My discovery call. So the secret here is actually to go back to your company's value proposition, right? Because presumably your company and your product exists in a marketplace that is competitive. We all have competitors, right? So something about your product presumably is differentiated from your competitors. Now let's take that differentiation and extend it to your content. That's where it falls apart for people. So to help people kind of bridge this, I call it the content value proposition, right? If your company has a unique value proposition, if your product has it, let's lay it on over, bring it on over, pull that thread all the way through to your content value proposition. And that is, what is a person going to get from reading this, right? And it should be aligned with the product value. So you should have a unique voice, right? Bamboo HR is friendly, has a very friendly voice, right? They have a warm voice. Their tone should be, you know, like that. Whereas there could be another HCM company that has a more formal voice. Perhaps they work with accounting firms, right? So you should think about the audience on the other side, and you should think about the brand. What makes the product different? Let's use it to make the content different, right? That, bring it on over. Make sure that that comes through, because you almost certainly do have a way of talking about the problem that is different than the way that your competitors do. I bet your salespeople do it. I bet your market, your other collateral does it. It's let your blog do it too. Like, you know, so you can answer the same question about about performance management software. I mean, even just as an example here of something that you and I, we work on BetterWorks, right? And BetterWorks has a distinct voice and sort of persona around the way and viewpoint on modern performance management and the tone, compared to, say, an old school performance management platform that is more about compliance. We don't talk about compliance on BetterWorks, right? Like, we don't talk about that. Like, that's not, babe, do the right thing, check the boxes, right? Is what a compliance oriented platform would say. BetterWorks says better conversations lead to better performance. So bring it all the way over, you know, like, just come on, like, commit to it. That is the secret. And usually when I say that, it starts to click for people, at least after a few posts, right? Bring the brand into the content. People are so scared to do that. I guess I'm curious, is that what you also see as well? I mean, I know we work on some projects together, so you see that, but we also have our own separate things. But what do you think keeps people from doing that?
I tell you this, you've seen this on my LinkedIn post, is I think as an SEO as a profession, I think over the last decade or so, I think we had a tendency to be very focused on ranking factors, which is all right and fair. They're because important. It works extremely well, and it brings extremely relevant traffic. And what's been kind of like forming in my mind is this idea, if I have a topic, a keyword cluster, and I create a content briefing for that, that content briefing is a skeleton. It talks to us about, you know, what type of page do we want? What is a kind of like word count, like estimate that we want? What are some of the topics that you could be covering within that page? But it is a skeleton. It doesn't really tell you all that much about your target audience. It doesn't tell you all that much about the story, like you said, about the flavor and color. It doesn't tell you whether you should be using an example from a certain industry or a certain persona, what kind of like industry stats you should be putting, what kind of images. It's really a skeleton. And I think as SEOs, and I'm guilty of that myself, we've been often taking the skeleton very literal, and that makes it that we all produce like similar-ish stuff. And I think the idea is really that the skeleton is your chance to build truly unique content. And so a few weeks ago, I learned that rock singer Ryan Adams redid Taylor Swift's album. And so he literally did the same songs, the same lyrics, the same melody, the same skeleton. However, you know, if picture here on the left, if you know, Shake It Off from Taylor Swift, it's bubbly, it's bold, it's girly, it's playful, you know, it's a party starter. Whilst the song that Ryan Adams did is kind of sad, melancholic, you know, like heartfelt. And so even though they had the same script, they had the same lyrics, they had the same melody, they came to a very, very different result. And same, like you look at these two people here in the picture, you would not confuse Taylor Swift with Ryan Adams or the other way around. You would not hear the song and like the manly sad voice. You would think like, oh, it's clearly Taylor Swift singing. And so that is something that I'm trying to encourage people more to use as an example of how you should differentiate your content and how it should feel different and be different. And then just the other example that I came up with is also, if we think about all the Disney remakes, would you really take the old cartoon Cinderella and confuse it with the live action film? And so I don't think you would, even though they have the same script, the same characters, the same story arc. And so to your point, Mary Ellen, that color voice examples, I think, is going to be increasingly important. And to drive the point home, Google has released a helpful content algorithm update in August. And one of the things they say there is that they're interested in seeing unique stuff on the page. And I think in many ways that is a direct result of all of us copying each other, writing an article that is copied off what's already on page one, that's now copied by content AI, et cetera. And so I don't think the helpful content update is the answer to all of these problems, but it's definitely a step in the right direction in terms of like, we need unique voice and we need a voice to begin with.
You should swap this out with some Little Mermaid pictures. Really
I was looking for it, but I only found a very like pixelated, like Little Mermaid.
Really get them going. You know, it's interesting too. You mentioned the AI tools, and so I want to talk about that a little bit because those can be your best friend or your worst enemy right now. Okay. I love AI in content. I am actually super bullish on the power of AI to help us produce better content more efficiently and more reliably than we have ever, right? And free us up for more of what I call like sort of more energy for like the work of like coming up with a big idea and like figuring out how to bring it out in the world. I love it, okay? What I don't love is when people use it to just copy things. Like I got really mad at SEMrush because they added this tool that was like this rewrite tool. And I'm like, this is bad. This is encouraging a bad behavior. And they were very adamant that, oh, that's not what we intended it to be. It was to help people who are getting stuck with their writers and writer's block and like how to, you know, rephrase things. And I'm like, no, that's not writer's block. Like writer's block is something very different. And like, this is literally letting you take and somebody else's existing header and like swap it around. That's how people are using it. And it's bad. It makes bad content. Like you are not, you know, so we had some back and forth about it. Where the AI is good is in things like Lately, for example. I'm a big fan of Lately, in which you can have, if you take a single piece of like well-structured, they love good, well-structured SEO content, actually. So if you've done your job correctly for Google, and then you feed it into Lately, it will give you back suggestions based on for social copy. Based on that, but your headers need to be good. If you did, well, it was all about the structure to begin with. So you put great content in and it'll give you pretty good content back. It'll never be better than what you fed it. But, you know, that's how we use the AI. Don't use the AI to rewrite other people's stuff, I guess is all I would say. I also think Co-Write's doing some interesting things in which you can tell them the headline and some of the key elements, and it'll give you back your suggested headers. That's super helpful. That is a helpful use of the AI. Please do that. Not helpful is using the AI to write your copy because we're just not, you miss the opportunity to express yourself when you do that. You miss the thought leadership.
Absolutely. And I think the talk in the marketing space about thought leadership, about messaging is increasing, about brand. And I love all of that because I think hopefully it will lead us to a future where these two are clearly distinct if they were an SEO piece. We are kind of like 3 minutes out. And so anyone that has any super urgent, important questions that they need to want an answer to, please post them now. Otherwise, I just quickly wanted to recap. We talked about the right time or not the right time for SEO. We talked about why glossaries are everywhere and anywhere now. We talked about that ranking is not necessarily a measure of SEO success if you're not converting or no one remembers you, and why you need to think about a unique tone of voice, even for your SEO content, which is normally not first in line for a messaging refresh. If you want to reach out to us, there's definitely always the invitation, to ask questions and kind of like talk more about this. I'm deeply inspired and excited about all of this. And so please do. And Ooh, yeah.
I think that once you said something I thought was really interesting. Your competitors are your teachers. That's 100% true. That is actually how I like to think about this, Viola. I don't know if you would agree with that. If you saw that note,
saw that in the, yep.
Yeah, he said your competitors are your teachers because they truly are, right? But don't look at them to copy them. Look at them for inspiration, right? Make yourself, find where you're different. Like, that's fun. So.
I agree with all of that. And then, yeah, reach out. And then last plug, talking about good looking stuff. We just redesigned the Flow SEO blog. And so if you've never come to our website, come by and have a look. We have a lot of good content up there. Thank you everyone who joined. It's been amazing to see some familiar faces, some new faces. Make sure to follow Mary Ellen on LinkedIn. Make sure to check out all her work at rapcap.com. Thank you so much, Mary Ellen. It's been an absolute pleasure. Every time I'm on the phone with you, time flies. And I just want to keep having you here and keep going. And I really appreciate that you came on today.
It's our favorite topic. We would do this all day. Like I told somebody that the other day was where we had come in on a similar client where I found out that they had hired you too. And I was like, oh yes, no, I understand. Like where we're good. Like when's the kickoff? When's the kickoff? I would also say this week, if you're interested in thinking about how we approach thought leadership, we do have a webinar on Thursday that is about content marketing specifically for consultants. Now, and the SEO plays a role in this. You'll actually hear me quoting Viola in there just to bring this all full circle. But it's really about thinking about how can consultants, I think service business is a little different from software. And like, how can you use these, content, what role does SEO play in thought leadership and influencer content? But it's on Thursday at 11 Central. I'm going to be talking for an hour all about consultants.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I think that's exactly to the point that someone has asked before is like, how does this all apply to consulting business? So I'll just pop, Mary Ellen, I'll pop your LinkedIn in the chat, and I'm sure people can find the webinar from there. Or if you have the link handy, let's share it. Otherwise, we will do another one in October, tentative date, 25th of October. Yeah, again, if you're not following Mary Ellen yet, now is the time to do so.
Oh, thank y'all.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a beautiful day.